And one of the last things locked in the trunk were my firearms locked and unloaded.
Brian even called the New Jersey State Police and did exactly what they told him to do to transport his firearms. But that didn't matter. He was still sentenced to 7 years in prison.
There are those solid in their belief that the left in America will stop at nothing until they have removed all the legal handguns in this country or make criminals of those who do. And when they talk about criminalizing legal ownership, one of the names brought up is our next guest, who spent 4 months in prison after simply crossing a state line, a particular state line. He's detailed the experience in the new book, The Blue Tent Sky, How the Left's War on Guns Cost Me and My Son My Freedom. Brian Aitken joins us here on MidPoint. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
Brian, we only have a few minutes here, so if you would briefly tell us exactly what happened and why you were stopped.
Yeah, in 2009, I was stopped just because my mom had placed an abandoned 911 call. And what that had triggered was a police response to my parents' house while I was in the process of moving. So I was at my mom's house and had been living there for about a week and had moved from Colorado to be closer to my son so that I could see him. And while I was there, my ex-wife had canceled visitation for the 4th week in a row when I said, I don't know what the point in being here is if I can't see my son. I packed up my car, I left, I was moving to Hoboken, and my mom, a trained social worker, dialed 911 and hung up the phone before anybody answered. And that was really it. That's when everything started.
So the cops then came after you?
Halfway to Hoboken when I...
Cops came after you then, they found you, they searched the car, they found your legal guns in your trunk. You owned them, there was no doubt whatsoever, correct, that you owned these guns?
No doubt. I'd flown with approval from TSA. I had FBI, CBI, and ATF background checks. I mean, these were completely legally owned firearms. And in fact, 3 days before I had moved, 3 days before I'd been arrested, I had called the New Jersey State Police to ask them, how do I move legally with my firearms?
Okay, so why then did it take, you actually were arrested on this and you spent 4 months in prison. I'm curious, how could they not have discovered this, and why was all of these legalese issues, these legal issues not taken care of that forced you into prison? It would seem like this is a couple of phone calls and you straighten it all out.
Well, in New Jersey, firearms are pretty much illegal. So you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent in the state of New Jersey. So there's a law that makes all firearms illegal, and then there's a whole bunch of exemptions that say you can have them in your house, you can take them from the store that you buy them at to your house, from your house to go to the shooting range, to go hunting, and of course from one house to another when you're moving. But the judge didn't want the jury to know what those laws were. They didn't want the jury to know that I was legally allowed to have the firearms. So he refused, and the jury actually came back 3 times begging for the exemptions, begging to know the law, and the judge refused to let them know.
So we have about a minute left here again. Let me get to the point. Why is it that you believe that this is the left and that something here is wrong, and why this needs to be changed?
Well, I mean, to be frank, it's not the conservatives who are waging a war on firearms. This is perpetuated by Bloomberg and Pelosi and the liberal media. And I think it's important that I call that out, because a lot of the time we talk about hypotheticals, like these could be victims of the gun war, but I'm here to put a face and a name on the consequences, and these are intended consequences. This is retaliation for being a law-abiding gun owner.
And you still haven't seen your son in how long?
He turned 7 in February, on February 15th, and I haven't seen him since his first birthday.
Are you going to be allowed to see him again? Are you legally allowed to see him?
I am, only under the most ridiculous of circumstances. So a family court judge said because I possessed firearms, he wasn't convinced that I couldn't possess them again. I have no other criminal history, no mental health background, and the judge said that I have to be in a courtroom reserved in advance under the direct supervision of an armed police officer for 1 hour a week in order to see my son.
We want to make sure that people see this book because it's called The Blue Tent Sky, How the Left's War on Guns Cost Me, My Son, and My Freedom. It is a harrowing tale of being thrown in jail when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. I want to thank you again for your time. A very Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you, Ed. You too.